Now I want to add another parameter to my library, a speed of shaking. I think it's very likely that a user will want to set his own speed. Besides, it will be really easy to implement. And I'll increase a default speed because 5 seemed a little too fast. Let's run it. Now it shakes at a default speed of 15. I'll pass 1000, which means that now the text has to make only one step per second. Right, it became very slow. Switch it to 1. Very fast. Good. Let's provide some small scale of shaking, and the steps become appropriately short. Okay. But I will return to a default speed of 5 milliseconds, because 50 wasn't crazy enough. What I really don't like about these options is that you can misspell any of these names, and my library will just silently ignore this misspelled option. And that's not a good developer experience. It would be better to notify a user about incorrect option names. The most solid way would be to introduce TypeScript, and it will start shouting at you whenever it sees a non-existent option name. But TypeScript is kind of too expensive for my project. My modest solution will be to manually check all the user-defined options and warn a user about misspelled options in the browser console. I will go through all of the user-defined options and check every option name for being present in a list of available names. This list will be, for instance, an array called option names. And if this array doesn't include the name specified by a user, then I will print a warning that this name isn't supported. Wow, we have a lot of new code. It's all not extremely cool, but better than nothing, I suppose. But instead of keeping a separate array of available option names, let's create an object of all default options, which will become a source of truth about the option names and their fallback values. So here I'll first obtain all the keys of this default options object. Now let's misspell something here. Scale of shaking, for example. Refresh. It starts shaking more freely. It means that we are again using a default scale. And the console says that there is a problem. Okay, but let's handle options in some overall more solid way. I want to make a function that will do everything we need in respect of options. First of all, it will choose between default and user-defined options and return an object containing all the final values. And this will be user options. I think it's more transparent now. And here we use the actual ones. Okay, and now I'll make this cool function that will choose the right option value and will write console warnings about misspelled option names. I'm going to take these default options and make a copy of it where some values will be replaced with the corresponding user-defined options. I have to be careful with copying the default ones. I will use this well-known trick to make a deep copy. This will protect any deeply nested properties from being accidentally altered by shitcoders like me. Now I'll paste this block with warnings. If the option name is okay, it will replace a default option with this user-defined one. And I have to return this stuff. User options, of course. Now this fallback is not necessary, because we already have it in actual options. Now let's try it without options. It's working with default ones. Let's specify custom options. Let it be a slow and narrow shaking for now. Oops, almost invisible, but it works. Make a mistake? The warning is here. Now I'm afraid that I have to rewrite this getTranslateX function, because now it does some unnecessary work. I'll pass only scale of shaking here and here. And the fallback value is already provided in this parameter, so this stuff should be removed. Now this function became really simple, and I'm not even sure if we need it as a separate thing anymore. As far as I remember, we had some tests for this function, and this makes me sad because they must be broken and possibly useless after all these changes. I must not forget to run these tests. For now, let's try it in the browser. Still working. And the test is very unhappy. Gets the length returned not a number in all cases. And I'm afraid that it's hopeless. There is almost nothing to test in this function. This test case isn't relevant anymore, because anyway a scale of shaking is now a required argument. Applies user-defined scale of shaking. That's also irrelevant because now this function just blindly accepts a scale, which could be either default or user-defined scale, but this function is unaware of that. And this case is also broken, and I just don't understand what's the point here. The function is now extremely simple, in fact. So really I have to admit that I wrote these tests prematurely. This code was too unstable. So it was just a waste of time. I want to kill myself. But anyway, I hope that someone could learn something new in the process.